Hello and welcome to another Cystic Fibrosis Trust CF Talk Roundtable. I'm here with three other people with cystic fibrosis who helped to advise the author Alice Peterson on the portrayal of cystic fibrosis in her new novel based on the life of Alice Martineau called A Song for Tomorrow. My name is Oli Lewington. I am the Director of Engagement at the Cystic Fibrosis Trust, and I'm joined by three other people with cystic fibrosis who will introduce themselves to you now. Tim.
Hi everyone, my name is Tim Wotton. I am 46, live in London, and have double delta 508.
Jo.
I'm Jo. I live in Crawley, down near Gatwick Airport, and I'm a music therapist.
I'm Emma, and I'm not that far from Jo actually. I'm in Redhill, and I work at the Cystic Fibrosis Trust with Oli, as you know, as the community manager.
Grand. So let's start. We'll start with you, Jo. Just tell us a little bit about how you got involved in this project. How did Alice reach out to you, and what was she interested in learning from you?
I heard from her, I think, via Tim. I think Tim passed on my details. She was interested in talking to me because I have CF and I'm also a singer, as Alice Martineau was. So I think she wanted to know, just get the perspective of someone who would take the crazy route of singing with a lung disease. So yeah, I heard from her via email and we met up for an afternoon to chat.
So Tim, how did you get involved, and what made you direct Alice towards Jo?
So I was reached out directly by the CF Trust as an author myself, but also with CF. We met in a lunchtime on the Strand in London, where I was working at the time, and she had pencil and pen ready. She was such an engaging lady who, because she has had and does have some disability herself, she could get and understand straight away that our daily routine and our persistent struggle is one that she could put herself in our shoes. And as I learned that she wanted to speak and bring the life of Alice Martineau, who was an amazing singer, she wanted to bring her story to life, it was natural that I suggested, speak to Jo. She knows exactly what it feels like to try and get those notes when you're short of breath and when you're feeling tired and desperate to make an effort and go beyond, go the extra mile. So she was a natural person I would want Alice to meet, and plus she's lovely. So we had a great chat, and she was desperate to learn. And she, from the get-go, she started to understand the nuances of CF. And the two things that most people don't understand, A, how severe it is, and B, that there's no remission and it's every single day. And she got that straight away.
And Emma, you go to the same hospital that Alice went to, which is the Brompton in London, and that features quite heavily in the book, as it would, talking about the life of someone with cystic fibrosis. How did you get involved in the project, and how did you feel it was kind of working with Alice on your perception of CF and your experience of the Brompton?
Yeah, I think like Tim and yourself, I was contacted through the trust as well, because anybody who works there knows that I quite like talking about myself, and that I'm quite a not open and honest person, so maybe that's why they thought I would be a good idea. And Alice came to my house, spent the day with me, but she also went to the Brompton with me to a couple of my clinic appointments, so she really does know what the Brompton looks like, how it works. When she talks about walking up the ramp and opening your yellow folder, it is exactly true to life. And she's really, I think for me, that's because she picked up on all the details that you wouldn't have even realised she was picking up on. And I think, as Tim has said, actually, her having her own condition that she lives with every day in the same way that we do, it made it easier to talk to her because she knew that she understood and that actually she would deal with everything that you told her in the right way. And I think she has.
And it's interesting because for me, I think it's that attention to detail that really pulled me in, and that I've been really amazed by, in terms of I've spoken to a few different authors who have worked on books that have had characters with CF, or writers in television shows. The Trust, early on in my time at the Trust, I worked with the BBC on EastEnders and the character they had there. And it just feels to me that Alice paid so much more attention to the detail and the day-to-day of what cystic fibrosis is like. And it didn't feel to me like she fudged it at any point. She didn't kind of try to make it work because it worked for the narrative. She actually built the narrative around cystic fibrosis.
Yeah, I think when I was reading it, I think probably the highest accolade I could pay is that I didn't notice the detail, almost, because there was nothing there that I was like, that's wrong, that's wrong. Everything was just, yeah, this is right. You know, it just kind of felt natural, and that's what I know in my life. And it's only kind of talking about it now that I'm thinking, yeah, actually, all those details, she did really get them right. And they're so naturally put in that it didn't even kind of really occur to me that that there was that much detail, but there really is. And there were no mistakes. Nothing where I went, no, that's not right.
Yeah, I think that's a really significant point, isn't it? That actually, most of the time when we see CF portrayed out in the world in some way or another, we notice it because of the things that people get horrendously wrong. You look at things like Twitter, and if you follow anything with a character with cystic fibrosis on it, you'll see things like Holby City popping up constantly for their terrible representation of cystic fibrosis, and there just weren't any of those exceptions in it.
No.
And to build on Joe's point, there were certain phrases that really just was a manifest for a CF life. Like, there was a line about the night time is your enemy, and it is at times when we're having coughing fits and we're waking up our partners, and I've got a young son. It does feel like the enemy, because you can maybe have a relatively good day, but then just at the wrong time you have a coughing fit when you're trying to get off to sleep and everything's quiet, and nighttime can be your enemy. And there was just little moments like that I thought that's beautifully done, because that actually, people only see the CF in the daylight, but actually it's 24 hours. It doesn't stop, and you've got to wake up the next day having had probably a rubbish night's sleep and still put a brave face onto the world.
And Emma,
I think.
Go for it.
Ooh, sorry. No, I was just going to pick up on that, going back to actually just the detail. I think, you know, I don't know how you felt, but when you first met her, I thought, this is lovely, this is engaging, or nice, it'll be a book. But it was afterwards when she was still ringing me and like just asking me really random questions, like, oh, have you ever had a tattoo? Or, you know, what would happen if I left this medication out the fridge? And I was like, oh, actually, you are taking it really seriously. And that's when I thought, actually, this book could just be amazing.
Yeah, I
Sorry,
agree.
Oli, yeah.
There's that whole kind of struggle portrayed as well between, you know, the demands of CF and the kind of struggle to live a normal life. And that's really, and in Alice Martino's case, kind of more than a normal life, you know, to do something that even most people with perfect health don't get to do. You know, most people would find tiring. And kind of trying to get that balance is such a big part of CF, trying to pace yourself and work out what's too much and what's not too much, and when to push it and when not to push it. And you know, that's a really hard part of it, because sometimes you can push it and you can get away with it, and other times you have to really kind of rein yourself in, and that can be so frustrating. And you really got the sense of that frustration of you know, her health holding her back when she really wanted to do so much.
And the fact that it's not just from Alice Martineau's perspective in the book, it's from her mum's, it's also from her boyfriend's. It gives you actually a sort of a more holistic view of what it feels like, and not just from the CF person's point of view, but how a partner would feel, how the parent would feel, and that actually made it a better book. Plus, it didn't hold back with showing that actually some people you meet are quite rude and disdainful of you with your illness because they're just too ignorant. And CF sadly isn't that well known yet. It's better understood, but it's still got a long way to go. So we do meet a lot of ignorance, and the book portrayed that. You will hear, as a CF person, lots of really, really hurtful comments out and about, and she got into that. The book portrayed that, so that was very real.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing just picking up on what you were talking about, Tim, the other relationships to cystic fibrosis and the way it felt to me. She obviously had spent a lot of time with the Martineau family to understand Alice, and she obviously spent time with the four of us to better understand cystic fibrosis and the detail of it. But that level of detail in the relationships and what actually our partners, our parents, our siblings go through is really interesting to me. And I know it's something, Emma, you and I talked about relatively early on after we got the kind of proof copies of the book through. We were talking about that representation of the other people in our lives.
Yeah, I definitely think that parents and partners will pick this up and they will recognise themselves and their own experience. I think this book is so much more than just about cystic fibrosis. It's about relationships. And I think it really shows, I know because a lot of the stuff that I shared with Alice was about my husband, so I know that a lot of the stuff in that book is directly taken from my husband, so he can never read it. But I think I want to give it to people and say, look, okay, I can talk to you till I'm blue in the face about what CF means for me, but this is what it means for my husband. This is what it means for my mum. My mum read that first chapter and was like, I did that, I only left you at the hospital, I didn't think I could cope. But she had never said that to me before. So the fact that people can use the book also to maybe have conversations around relationships and their CF and how they deal with things, I think is, well, I don't even really know the word, but yeah, exciting.
And what about then the I guess the historic side of the book? One of the things that struck me that I'm interested in from your point of view, Joe, is there was a lot of resistance to Alice becoming a singer because people thought it was really dangerous for someone with a lung condition to try to do something like that. Whereas actually now, something like singing is much more actively encouraged in people with CF. Did you find that a kind of an interesting side of the book to look back sort of 20 years into what CF used to be like?
Yeah, I mean, that's not something I've ever encountered in my life, people telling me I shouldn't sing. I think, I mean, I've always sung, so there's never been a time when I haven't. But it was always seen as a positive thing that it's exercising my lungs. Singing is amazing for exercising your lungs. Whether you're a professional or not, whether you can sing in tune or not, it's amazing. I used to play the flute as well when I was younger, and that's also very good for those kinds of wind instruments, and singing are really good. And I think that's one of the reasons why, I was kind of quite well through my childhood. I was doing a lot of singing and playing flute and those kinds of things. So yeah, it is interesting to kind of see that she would have been so discouraged from it. And I think there are still probably concerns. I think for myself, I know that, I was reading and I thought, I can't imagine at my level of health kind of trying to go for it the way she did. The thought of it was exhausting to me. So the fact that she achieved what she did is absolutely incredible, I think. So I do feel like there are limitations, but they're different for every person. You have to find your own level, don't you? And some people like Alice clearly don't accept limitations at all, and they go for it. It all depends on your personality, doesn't it? But yeah, I mean, I don't think I could live without music and without singing, and that's a big part of my life, and it's a big part of, I think, a lot of people's lives. So it's good to know that it's also good for me. And I'm glad I was never told that it wouldn't be, you know? So, yeah.
And obviously we can't talk about the historical side of the novel without talking about the cross-infection side of the novel. And for people who might be watching this who are unaware of the situation with cystic fibrosis, the four of us who are on this call can never be in the same room together because there's a real danger of us passing deadly bugs between each other. So that's why it's set up as a Google Hangout for us to chat on. But that wasn't always the case. And without wanting to be, to put too much emphasis on it, Tim, you are the oldest of us here. Do you remember the days before cross-infection?
I do, and I used to go to the Brompton. It's one of my, smorgasbord of hospitals that I've visited. And in the good old days, I actually, after appointments, I went down the pub with people with CF. So, I've done well to get to 46, but I've also lived a bit as well. And it's not, you've got to do the meds and be active, but also you've got to live a life and be fun and happy. So we did. We went down the pub and we're inside. It wasn't like we were drinking outside because we shouldn't be together. We didn't have any idea. All the waiting rooms were people with CF all sat together chatting. In fact, that's sorely missed now. And so virtually we can all chat, but it doesn't feel the same as when you could just sit next to somebody in the waiting room and just chew the fat and see how they were doing. So that is a different world. We all have our signature coughs, like a newborn baby has its signature cry. So actually in the CF ward, I can hear, oh, that's so-and-so. Yep, that's there in cubicle 1. So it's that now. We know each other by our coughs and the odd joke around the corner. And you see them in the corridor, people, and you wave, but we're like ghosts. It's such a shame. But we all know why it's got to be that way.
It's funny, isn't it? Because I'm a little bit younger than you, Tim. So I remember growing up, going to CF Clinic and playing with other kids with CF. And I remember another charity brought some kids over from Romania that had CF to come and meet me. It was a bit weird. But then all of a sudden being told, actually, you can't play with your friends anymore. And really not understanding what everyone was going on about, where at least you could maybe understand more about why that change was happening.
Yeah, I remember going on holidays with people with CF. I went on one US holiday with a charity that took people away, and I went on a CF camp once, which was literally an entire dormitory full of people with cystic fibrosis. And the idea of that now is just so completely bonkers. And it was just, you're right. It is really sad that we don't have that anymore, because you read this book particularly and you see that kind of little tight network of friends that she's got, what Alice calls in the book her anti-support group. and actually, whether or not those characters are real in Alice's life, I think we all kind of had a similar anti-support group growing up, and we all could hang out with other people with CF, and certainly I've done it before, and to not be able to do that anymore does just feel way more isolating than is represented in this book. And I wonder if younger people with cystic fibrosis reading this will appreciate what that used to be like. Joe, do you remember the days before cross-infection?
I do, but I didn't have any CF friends. I knew a couple of people that were much younger. CF, there were a couple at my primary school when I was there, but they were about 5 years younger than me. So, and I never really felt the lack of it, to be honest. I was very well as a child. I was lucky. And I didn't feel like I needed CF friends. But now I have sort of 3 or 4 people that I would count as friends, who obviously I can't meet up with now because of the cross-infection thing. So I read it and I think, oh, I missed out. But I now realise how valuable it is to be able to I remember the first time I sort of had a real proper conversation with another lady with CF, and I thought, wow, I didn't know that I was missing this. Just being able to talk to someone that just totally gets it straight away, and you can talk about physio and they know what you're talking about and you don't have to explain anything. Someone that's experienced it, I never kind of really realized that I wanted that. And then unfortunately, by the time I did realize I wanted it, all this cross-infection control was in place. So I've never really had that. So yeah, reading the book, I did think, oh, I missed out. I wish I had known people when I was younger. But then probably it was better for my health that I didn't at the same time. So it's a mixed blessing, I suppose.
So, but it's really rare in life, guys, that you would ever virtually meet somebody or have a phone call and actually you know them inside out and you've never met them.
Yeah.
It's and I speak to people around the world, and it's like we don't even need to really speak because we just get it. I know what happened to that person that morning. I know what they had to suffer at, probably at lunchtime. If they're an insulin diabetic like me, what they did, with all those meds as well as on top of all the CF ones. I know the coughing fit they probably had at night time, and it's so real. And you've got this really tight bond, which, but actually there's more than that. It's actually, there's this sort of group resilience, and actually CF people, without sometimes realizing it, are pretty amazing. And I think we don't stop enough to actually just work out what we get up to and put up with every single day, and that we still come through. And actually, the book sort of shines a light on that spirit. And I use that word on purpose. We all have a strong spirit that other people who may be blessed with good health could probably go their whole life and never even have to tap into. But we have it in spades. Because we've got no choice.
Yeah, and that one of the things in the book as well is reading a book with a main character who did physio in the morning and had to do nebulizers and had to take tablets and had coughing fits on the way to her appointments. And, I, as most of us probably haven't read a novel with a character that has that life before, Sometimes you read books about people with various different conditions, but to be like, yeah, I know that's my morning, was like, that was really quite affirming in a way, to be like, yeah, that is accurate. That's what we live with. But then again, like you say, to get that balance of not shying away at all from any of that stuff, but also not making it the whole book, that actually Alice's character and her spirit shone through a lot more than kind of the things that were the kind of CF difficult things. Her spirit was the thing that shone through in the book.
So I'm conscious of time, and we do need to wrap this up and stop talking at some point, even though I feel like we could keep talking about this for the rest of the evening. But I'm interested in your perception of kind of how the book has been received, and how, I guess, what you would like people to take from this if they read it. So, Emma, what do you think?
I think that the community who I know have read it, have really enjoyed it. I think there are a lot of people who are maybe a bit scared to read it because they might already know Alice's story and be a bit nervous about reading that sort of stuff if they're not ready to face up to that aspect of CF. But I think it goes to what Joe was saying. It's so life affirming. And for me, it shows how CF is. A person is more than just your CF. Alice was so much more than her CF, and so are we. It's somebody's life. It isn't just about CF.
Tim, what do you hope that people will take from this?
Well, everybody in the CF community sort of knows CF. We suffer it every day. My aspiration is to move the needle on everyone else knowing more about it. And I think this book is achieving that. It's not often that you go into your W.H. Smith or your Foyles or your Waterstones and there's just a CF related book. That's unique. Not only that, it's a novel. It's got a lovely, amazing album that's linked to it called Daydreams, which is Alice's only album, and just haunting, beautiful music. So people are touched by the words, but they're touched by the downloads of her music as well. So one of the most poignant things, and I know that Alice Peterson feels delighted about this, but certainly Alice Martineau's family and brother, that she lives again. And that's been amazing to watch and see.
And Joe, how about you?
Yeah, I think really a lot of what Tim just said. I hope that people will read it and understand a bit more of what we go through, and that even though we might look healthy, we're actually, you know, our full-time job is kind of living with this illness. Really, it's a really a big thing, but also, like as Emma said, it's not the only thing about us. In fact, there's so much more that is there, and that balance really is so important. I think I hate melodramatic kind of really over the top kind of isn't it terrible kind of stuff. And this book actually, you know, it does show all the warts and nasty things and difficult things, but it also is really life affirming and really shows what can be achieved even with the challenges we face and other people face as well in different ways. So yeah, I hope it raises awareness. I hope that people understand a bit more. I hope that there's less ignorance out there. And I hope it does really well, because it's such a good, accurate portrayal and such a positive one.
Great, thank you. And I want to thank all three of you for being part of this as well, because I think as much as we have paid tribute to Alice Peterson's attention to detail in writing this book, I think it's really important to acknowledge that actually if you guys hadn't got involved and if we hadn't had the conversations that we had with Alice, she wouldn't have been able to represent CF as clearly as she had. And I think it's only your openness and honesty as part of this process that has enabled the book to be as true to life as it is. So thank you for being involved, and thank you for giving me and us your time to talk about this, because I think it's been a really it's been a fantastic discussion. I've enjoyed talking to all three of you, and I hope we can talk again in the future. Thank you.
This is the book. Share it. Thanks, Oli.
Thanks very much, guys.